Hey there YouTube, I'm Ikitsu, this is the Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a little bit of Sins of a Solar Empire 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Dunov battlecruiser. And this thing is a ship that I think broadly speaking people just say is fine. There's nothing like super wrong with it. It's pretty good, but I also never take it in spite of the fact that I also think it's pretty strong. It's a ship that I feel doesn't mesh necessarily that well with the tech sort of style. And because of that, I think it gets like maybe a little bit neglected by some players, me included. It is good, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that it's not. But yeah, it's got some different things going on for it. I think one of the things is like it's also a support ship, so you're never going to see it massed. Anyway, what we're looking at here: 500 durability, 2,975 shield points, 2,075 armor points, 3,445 hull points, 322 antimatter. For armaments, it's got a fighter squadron, and this does scale up a little bit. It only goes up to a maximum of, I believe, 3. It's got one heavy missile at 26.7 damage per second at 500 pierce, 4 medium autocannons at 8 damage per second for a total of 32 damage per second at 200 pierce, and it's got 4 PD autocannons at 4 damage per second each for a total of 16 damage per second. Now, it is possible, as far as I can tell, for the 4 medium autocannon install conversion one target. They don't seem to always do that. If we take a look at where the guns are located, this thing on top here is its missile launcher. I do think it looks a little bit weird for this particular type of ship to have it on this kind of turret, especially because they're tracking missiles anyway. We got a medium autocannon there, over there, and over here. And then the point defense guns are down here on the front, and then back here. I think that these are poor placements for the point defense guns, and honestly speaking, this thing should just have 8 point defense guns, additional 2 on the top, additional 2 at the back on the top, for a total of 8. But that's not what it gets. It's only got the 4. So this thing is pretty undergunned in terms of what it can do for damage. Even compared to some of the other support ships out there, I do not really think that this thing's hitting really for its weight class. Its only sort of good trait is that those heavy missiles do have a lot of durability to them. So what you can kind of do is have this thing going out there firing its missiles from long range, and it'll make the javelin more deadly because as soon as like the enemy point defense starts locking onto the heavy missile, especially if it's armored heavy missile, it is going to take them a long time to chew through it, and as a result, your javelins can get through more of their shots. So there is that. 32 damage per second on the medium autocannons, just not that great. It does have better conversion, so you're able to focus your fire a little bit better, but that number is only just fine. 26.7 damage per second for the heavy missile. For armor piercing damage is just fine. And then 4 point defense cannons is like, it's fine. Like, this is all sort of numbers where it's like, okay, well, it's doing fine. It's not really like amazing. It's a support ship. It's not supposed to like be brawling its way out of a major fight there, but like a lot of stuff out there does outgun the Dunov, unfortunately. Now, for hidden statistics, we're looking at 90 armor strength. This is actually really, really good, and it's got a maximum speed of 725, which is also pretty good. For a fairly fast cruiser type ship, this is actually pretty durable, capable of taking a lot of hits. Its armor points are very good, its armor strength is very good, so it can take a lot of damage before it goes down, and that's kind of important for this sort of thing there. The only reason that this thing sort of like does stand out a little bit for its fighting capability, though, is because of that fighter squadron, but even then, it's not quite enough to make it like something I would consider that dangerous. For abilities, energy transfer is its first one. This thing is a little bit janky. You can cast it once every 8 seconds. It's got a range of 6,000, antimatter cost 75. This means that you're going to be churning through your antimatter through this thing remarkably quickly, like way too fast for it to really keep up. It does a shield restore of 250, which is not that much. Now, it says max targets and then change shield restore 100. That's only when it's empowered by Overcharge, which is their level 6 ability, so you can't really plan around having this unless this is your like first ship that you start with and you're really focusing on leveling it. But I wouldn't really recommend that. It's a support ship. If it's using energy transfer, it really does want another capital to be using the energy transfer on. Like, you want to have a Cole sitting at the front line, dealing damage to the enemy, taking a bunch of damage from them, getting energy transfers from the Dunov. Still, even with that, this is probably the weakest ability on the Dunov, even though this is a pretty good energy, even though this is a pretty good heal. The reason is that you're going to run yourself dry on antimatter very fast, and then you're not going to be able to do as much. And this being a single target shield restore, it's just not going to have as big of an impact as some of your other abilities could potentially have. Next ability is EMP Charge. This is primarily a screw you advent kind of ability. The problem with this is that it's got a very small radius, but it is a radius spell, which is very, very nice. Cooldown of 50 seconds, range of 8,000, antimatter cost of 75. It does 250 shield damage, and it removes 40 antimatter for targets that are in the radius. 400 pierce, or 500 pierce, sorry, on that. You can see the area of effect size there. It's very, very small. If you've got a sort of perfect situation, you could hit maybe like 3 capitals with it, but not likely to get a ton more off of it than that. Or you could get a cluster of like frigates or something like that. Still, the way that the combat works, this is going to hit quite a few targets under a lot of circumstances, so I wouldn't say that that's a bad thing. This is really, really good damage if you consider the fact that it's AoE. It scales pretty well, and also the fact that you're also just doing this mostly to remove antimatter. All that combined makes this really, really scary. Now, there is diminishing returns to this. If you have an entire fleet of just Dunovs and they're all EMP charging, and your opponent has just taken like all battleships, those battleships are going to lose all their shields, they're going to lose all their antimatter, and then they're just going to punch you to death. So the Dunovs, the fact that they don't really like win fights all that effectively or all that easily just means that they're just going to get rumbled in like the actual gunfight, because you can keep EMP charging and they'll keep their shield suppressed down to 0, which is nice. It's going to keep their antimatter removed down to 0, but they've got all that armor, they've got all that hit points, and their guns hit way harder than the Dunov. So I don't think that EMP charge is going to win you fights. You do still want to think of this as a support ability that you're using to augment your Coles or your Marzas or whatever else. Now, if you have this amplified, the damage goes up to 500 shield damage, which is really good, and amplified antimatter removed is 60. So this scales really well. It's a pretty powerful ability. It's not as good at antimatter removal as the Radiance, but it's still something that you can do to like sweep through an enemy fleet and get rid of all their antimatter. Very good against things like a cluster of Iconis Guardians, by the way. Next ability is Magnetic Singularity. This one has a cooldown of 60 seconds, range of 15,000, antimatter cost 75. All the abilities here cost 75 antimatter, which is pretty expensive, but it gives you... It hits in a fairly large area of effect. This one I want to show because it's like a really good range, really good area of effects, capable of affecting even late game, like a good chunk of an enemy fleet. This reduces their speed by like a minus 25% modifier, or if it's been augmented to a minus 75%. Now, this does scale upwards to over 100%. Now, a minus 100% speed modifier to this game seems to not reduce their speed to 0. In fact, it seems to reduce their speed to half. And then if it's minus 200, it seems to reduce their speed to like a third. I'm not actually 100% sure how their calculations work for this, but it doesn't seem to be actual percentages based on their normal values, which is weird to me. However, by the time you're getting hit by the amplified speed modifier and it's like level 2 for like 150 or something like that, you're basically crawling so slowly that you're not getting out of a combat zone alive. So what you can do with Magnetic Singularity is you can, on the approach, hit your opponent with this and then bombard them with a ton of damage from things like your Marzas or your Javelises or your can't remember the name of the railgun ships, and just chew through a whole bunch of enemy ships before they can even get close to you. And then you can use it again later when they're trying to escape to prevent them from getting away, making it so that they can't turn around, they can't get to the grav well to get out of there. And in particular, like if you've got this on overcharge, it's going to make it real hard for your opponent to get out of the fight there. Without the overcharge, unless you get to level 3, it's not like a huge deal. You can still sort of like get out of gravity well. You can still like engage the fleet, but if you got it at the full value there, or you got it at overcharge, then it's really, really hard to escape the Dunov. Having a couple of these things here for primarily, in my opinion, EMP charge and Magnetic Singularity can make it so that it's really, really difficult to fight the Dunov fleet, even if there's only 2 of them. I don't think that I would necessarily build a significant amount more Dunovs than 2. Even if you can't catch the entire fleet with Magnetic Singularity, if you can only catch a third of it, if the enemy is not engaging with a third of their fleet at the start of the fight, That's a huge advantage for you. Like you can kill off a huge chunk of their fleet while you're outnumbering them, and then once they do get that last third in, they're sort of at a disadvantage by them because you managed to slow them down that way. It's really still strong on the chase. If you're capable of using a magnetic singularity to tie up a big chunk of the enemy fleet, you massacre just that one chunk of it. Can't catch the other parts. It doesn't matter. You still made a huge headway by catching that part of the fleet and destroying it. So the Dunov, I think, is really, really strong, but you just don't need to have like a ton of them. Their abilities are very decisive, but you don't need to spam those abilities across like 20 ships, all using those abilities there. The only exception to that would be energy transfer, but it requires other things to be going out there doing stuff for the energy transfer to even matter there. So let's take a look at a couple different builds there. If I know for a fact, for some reason, that I'm going to be able to get overcharge, you can make an energy transfer build. I think that would be pretty decent there. In that particular case, you're going for like some Hoshikos, you're getting energy transfer, you're using overcharge, and what you really want to do is just like have enough cruisers and enough battleships that this thing's capable of healing up there, and you just have it set to like autocast. You pop overcharge, and your build is probably going to be something like the antimatter engine. You're going to want something like the targeting race so that this ship goes to the further in the back. That way, it's not in the fight there. And then you're going to have a couple of defensive modules there. And if your opponent's not the sort of person who's capable of like really paying attention to where these effects are coming from or something like that, it's perfectly reasonable for you to use your Dunov without these defensive platings. In which case, what you can sort of do with this guy is you could give it something like, say, the Reserve Squadron. Those will sort of add some extra punch to your fleet, even without you having to do very much. You could add the Missile Guidance Computer, because this gives you an aura effect, and you just sort of park this guy with your Javelises. And while it's sitting there back there with the Javelises hiding in the back, it can use energy transfer on your front line and just keep that going. And you can also use the Volatile Accelerants if you want to. This is a good ship for that. It makes it so that you can really use this as your ship for the chase or for engaging or disengaging as you sort of desire there. The only thing that I think is really essential for this ship, if you're going for the shield restore, is the antimatter engine. It's going to make it so that during the early game you're capable of using a lot more of your energy transfers, especially because it's going to give you an extra bonus 322 right out of the gate, and then that ability to use the extra antimatter restore of 200 every 4 minutes. That's also really, really powerful for it. So only thing that's absolutely mandatory, it's nice to have the targeting rate to keep this thing pushed further to the back of your formation so that it's less likely to be a target. But you're going to want to be able to sort of like use overcharge and then just energy transfer. For this build, I would go primarily with Magnetic Singularity as its secondary ability. The reason is if your opponent decides that they're going to lock on and kill the Dunov, it can pop Magnetic Singularity and then make it so that your opponent can't shift past your front line to get to the Dunov. And also, if your opponent is trying to kill like the Dunov, one of the things is you don't have Magnetic Singularity on autocast. You don't need to cast this when your lines are sort of solidified and you're just shooting at each other. You only really need to use this when you're starting to maneuver. And as a result, you can sort of have yourself go down to really low antimatter by using energy transfer, just really spamming the hell out of it. And then you can use Magnetic Singularity, though. You can save enough to cast that one Magnetic Singularity. Just keep 75 in the tank for if you need to disengage or your opponent starts to try to disengage. And you pop it the one time, and that's fine. By contrast, if you have EMP charge, you kind of want to spam that. The only effect of it, if you've got like one of it, is like a little bit of shield damage and like maybe one less spell being cast your way. You really want to be using a lot of EMP charge over and over and over again. Up to a point, there is a maximum on that. So I do think that you go energy transfer, magnetic singularity is the combo for this thing. Now, for the next type of build, you would be looking at like an EMP charge one. This would be a little bit more of an aggressive use of the Dunov. This is a little bit more of a fighting ship version of it. You could still go for it being a backline support, though, taking something like targeting ray and stuff like that, and just flinging out EMP charge against like key targets or what have you. And in that particular case, you don't need antimatter engine as badly. You can cast this once every 50 seconds. It recharges antimatter relatively fine. It's got a fairly large pool. If you really want to, though, you can still get antimatter engine, especially if you're also going to be spamming that with occasional cast of magnetic singularity, just to make it so your opponent can't really relocate. However, if you're sort of going for this kind of EMP charge build, I would really say that you're more of a combat-oriented ship. Targeting array is still an option if you want to keep it in the back line, but you're looking more like things like flak burst, some armor, some core armor systems. Depends on what you're fighting against, of course, as well here. It's a little bit less important for you to get things like the flak or the reactive plating because you have got 4-point defense guns, but 4-point defense guns really is not that much in this game. So I would still consider anti-missile defenses as a decent idea there. And because we're a combat one, I wouldn't put like the volatile accelerants on this particular variety of ship. I still would never take the rapid autoloader for this guy because your main guns are just pretty weak. I wouldn't say that they're something that's worth focusing on, but that is sort of the way that that would be. Now, I don't think that you ever really need to like make a focus build around magnetic singularity. So, if you were going like for this to like be your you want like level 2 magnetic singularity at level 3, and you sort of like then leapfrog EMP charge over that over the next 3 levels, or 2 levels. What I would probably do in that particular type of build is I would treat this as a pure support build. In that particular case, you're looking at, again, targeting array. I would consider getting reserve squadron hangar, and I'd be looking at things like volatile accelerants, war reporter, and potentially even the high yield warheads in that particular variety of ship. Since I'm just trying to keep it in the back there, I'm just trying to find a good moment to stop my opponent from maneuvering. I'm trying to like hit him with a magnetic singularity so his lines clash with mine at an awkward sort of angle or moment, or missing part of his fleet, or I just use it when he's trying to get away. But what I take as my other ability sort of dictates more of what this is about rather than magnetic singularity itself, even if I've leveled it first and I've leveled it more aggressively than my other ability. So those are sort of the ways I view this thing. Typically speaking, it's like it's a support ship. The closest that it can get to being a real combat one is EMP charge focus builds. The reason that the Dunov isn't really a real combat ship, even with the access to EMP charge, again, is like you spam cast a whole bunch of this with like say 20 Dunovs. You've stripped away the opponent's shields. You've gotten rid of all their antimatter. You get in the gunfight and they just win. So you can't get through their armor. There's just chewing through you in terms of your guns being really bad. So it's a ship that's got its limitations there. Anyway, as far as important military research goes, this one does get benefits from those military grade rounds. Not only does it gain benefits from its guns, but it's also nice that it's capable of boosting its fighter craft. So that's something that's quite strong with this. You get, of course, access to the reserve squadron hangar, the flak burst. Those are very decent situational bonuses for this thing. The missiles, again, also good for the bombers as well as for the big missile launcher that is on the ship there. The armored missiles, I think, are really good for this. If you're going for the backline build, it's the extended range missiles. Because the way that this game works, typically speaking, like your ships will fire with their longest range weapon, and they won't automatically close into distance for their close range weapons, is what I've sort of noticed. So something like the Dunov can stay pretty far back with the extended range missiles as a bonus ability there, just keeping out of range. But its damage per second will drop if you're doing that. Of course, we're looking at the like armor plating bonuses. Those are always fantastic no matter what you're looking at, because this thing's actually got a fairly decent armor pool. That adds a lot to that. The hull point bonuses are quite good. This one doesn't have as good of armor points. Advanced maneuvering, always good, especially for this ship, because it's all about trying to get in and out of fights using its slowdown ability if it has to. Pretty much every build is going to want to have access to that, because being able to dictate whether your opponent can retreat is one of the most overpowered abilities in this game. Any of the abilities that can prevent opponents from retreating with their full fleet is really strong in this game. The antimatter boosts are going to matter quite a lot, even if you're going for the cheaper ones and not doing the shield transfer. Having access to potent reaction chaining will make sure that you can spam cast your abilities a little bit more effectively. The antimatter engine unlock is good for the shield build in particular. Now, I don't think that this thing has the best use of backup shield generator. It's obviously still going to benefit from it itself, especially because it's got very good armor. But being able to like use the shield restore doesn't mesh with enhanced shield cohesion as much as you'd think it would. Basically, if you're going for that route, what you do is you wait till your shields are actually down to 0, and then as soon as you're ticking on like backup shield generator, you sort of cast those abilities, I guess. Even then, I don't really think that they just sort of mix together all that well. I think that they have a bit of negative synergy. Now, the thing that really helps with this is if your opponent has got like the Dunov or some of your other ships really battered, what you can do is you can cast Magnetic Singularity and get those ships out of combat, wait till their shield burst does activate, and then since their shields are back, you can sort of cycle them back into the combat, or you can do something else there. But that's about the best that you can do sort of with the Dunov with the shield burst restore. Because hopefully this thing's not taking the damage, since it's, well, it's not fragile by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very high priority target. I do think that if your opponent really sort of sees the Dunov in the fight there, it is actually a really smart idea to focus it down and kill it early. Its abilities like can mean the difference between winning or losing a fight in a way that like not every other ship that you've got can. So I think that the Dunov is a very, very powerful ship there. Now, I don't think that you gain much benefit from like things like counter deployment or anything like that. Even more so than other capital ships, this one is like one of the. It's similar to the Akan. It's got very powerful, very meaningful abilities. It's got more guns than the Akan by quite an amount, but these things are not like your frontline fighters. They're there to support your fighters. You also get that with the Akan. Like you probably have like 2 Dunovs, 2 Akans, and that's going to be it for those guys. And they're going to do their job very, very well, but they're not going to be like the star of the show by any stretch of the imagination. But that does mean that you're never going to really worry about being able to like spam build them really, really, really quickly there. The other ability, of course, the maximum speed boost. It's a fairly fast battle cruiser, so it can get around the field pretty quickly. Being able to boost that number, since it's already fairly high, does add a decent amount of extra speed to it, and it's already fairly fast, so that helps it quite a bit there. In any event, though, that's going to be pretty much everything about the Dunov battlecruiser. I think that it's not underrated because everyone rates it fairly highly, but I also think that it's underutilized, but at the same time, I also think you shouldn't use too many of them. It's a very perplexing ship. I don't think it's a very tech-like ship in some ways, but all in all, like I think that you can definitely win some more fights using this thing if you start incorporating more of it into your fleets there. But in any event, though, that's going to be our video for today. Hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you all next time.